Assistant Professor Mahdev Mohan.
Mr. Chair, we've heard from the previous honourable members about the Keppel, O&M and the Sembcorp Marine bribery scandals. The scandals are a cautionary tale. I would like to focus the House's attention on how lapses of corporate governance could be prevented in the first place. What would we do going forward to stop this from happening again? And even if we can't avoid the risk altogether, how would we minimize and mitigate that risk? To be frank, Mr. Chair, we can ill afford the reputational damage of a prosecution, deferred or otherwise. Going forward, we've got questions which I would like to pose to the Prime Minister's office. In practice, do publicly listed companies, particularly government-linked ones, properly audit payments of large sums of money over a long period of time? Is there full, frank, and meaningful disclosure of related party transactions? Is there a diverse board of directors composed of competent directors who are more than just a mere rubber stamp for key decisions? And these questions are directly at all listed companies and not just government-linked companies. More specifically, is proof provided or are meaningful explanations given that there is an independent element to the board that is able to exercise independent judgment on corporate affairs? And finally, are appropriate stewardship obligations and principles that guide engagement with investors complied with by these listed companies? These questions are important, Mr. Chair, and I pose this to MAS in particular because we understand that there is a review of the Code of Corporate Governance, as we heard earlier, that's going on at the moment. Currently, this applies to listed companies in Singapore on a comply and explain basis, and is being reviewed to enhance corporate governance standards and practices in Singapore. Could MAS tell the House more about the origins of this review, and in light of the questions that have been posed, what is MAS's wish going forward? I understand that they can't pronounce or take a position because it's an ongoing review, but what led to this review? Is it an occasional review? Is it a periodic review? And are there certain points that we would like to instill in our corporate culture in Singapore? Beyond the ongoing review of the code, would MAS comment on whether the burden of maintaining market integrity solely rests on regulators, or has it gone beyond this to substantially shift to market participants such as financial institutions as well? Are financial institutions in turn expected to adhere to rules of responsible business conduct? Given that publicly listed companies face pressures of quarterly earnings, how does MAS intend to restore ethical, responsible business conduct, which is particularly relevant to the financial industry? That is, how would MAS intend to instill a culture that places values above and beyond profits? Finally, speaking of the OECD, Mr. Chair, the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises and its grievance and promotion, its grievance and regulation mechanism, the national contact points for responsible business, are well known. They are unique in the field of corporate responsibility as far as it relates to foreign direct investments. While the guidelines are not legally binding, these recommendations are instructive and persuasive to the 48 governments that abide by them as a matter of soft law. Would MAS consider utilizing these guidelines as a benchmark or coming up with guidelines of their own, which might be useful going forward?